Hello, welcome to theCUBE here in Palo Alto. I'm John Furrier, host with Paul Nashawaty, industry analyst with theCUBE Research. This is the final wrap up of the session, AppDev Done Right. Paul, great conversations you've had over the past few days, exploring all the spectrum of modern application development, from ideation and secure delivery to day two operations. Great event. Thanks for putting that on, and great insights coming out of that event. Awesome program.
Yeah, it was really amazing to see it all come together. That fresh data that we just got from the field, putting all that together really kind of closed in that the developer and innovation, platform strategy, and sustainable software delivery. It really kind of brought it to an end. That was really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, empowering developers is the hottest thing right now. You're seeing certainly the hype on the AI side driving tons of action. Platform engineering, as we've been covering since the early days of KubeCon, you've been on the road, talking to customers, talking to developers. The platform engineering is maturing. It's setting the table for resilient strategies for companies driving sustainable software delivery in today's highly rapid environment. What's the big takeaway that you see right now? What are the key pillars?
Yeah, no, it sure is, John. I mean, like when we talk about platform engineering, we talk about SREs and DevOps teams and how developer innovation is really kind of coming together. When we look at it, we're really trying to understand how organizations are fostering this culture of developing innovation to accelerate that software delivery, but also stay competitive in today's fast-paced market, right? So in our research, we found that 92% of developers are basically saying access to modern tools and platforms, it really directly impacts their ability to innovate, right? We also see teams with high developer satisfaction and autonomy. They're deploying 23% more frequently and 2 times more and higher innovation and velocity. So there's a lot happening there. And then you touched on a key point here that was definitely prevalent throughout the entire AppDev Summit is AI-assisted code tools like GitHub, Copilot. It's being used by over 45% of developers, accelerating experimental and reducing that boilerplate kind of approach that we're seeing. So I think there's a lot happening here, John. I know that you've been traveling a lot, you've been seeing a lot. What are you seeing from the developer innovation that kind of ties into this?
I mean, to me, the thing is, it's rock star status again, okay, on top of rock star status like in the previous generation, but it's even more high velocity with the AI pressure and the data platforms being formed. Databricks event recently just showed, and so did Snowflake as well as the events you were at, that the cost and efficiency equation's huge. That's going to be a big thing on the organizations, but developer productivity now kind of takes on the whole engineering side of it. So one of the big themes that we are taking away from these events is the vibe coding is going to convert into engineering. So if you remember back in the day, it was software engineering, then it became coding and developers. We're going back to engineering. And you're hearing the term AI engineering a lot, and that matches a lot of the DevOps evolution because platform engineering now is the category. Engineering the solutions to enable agentic. That is the hottest area for developers right now. And again, the two areas of most value extraction I'm seeing is coding and sales and marketing. Those are the hot areas where people are freelancing and getting wins. And you're seeing developers certainly go into databases, put them together, extract value there on the sales and marketing side, a lot of customer data. And then on the coding side, a tsunami of code assistance to actual coding and the beginnings of automation. This is, in my opinion, and looking at your summit here, AppDev Done Right has to factor in automation. So you're starting to see the dots connect, Paul, between what we've been covering on DevSecOps directly into where organizations are not only going to create value, but extract the value. And I think your stats that you were highlighting in your research are proof positive that this is where the action is. This is where the rubber is meeting the road. And the companies that have done their work on the platform side are reaping benefits on the, I would say, positioning of the enablement of the AI wave, which again, the data is all on top of the platform. So the platform strategies are now front and center. People are inspecting them, they're looking at them, they're saying, how much does it cost? How do we enable faster? And again, how do I go faster? How do I get that value extracted? Creation and extraction. Those are the key points. And the developers are in the middle of it. And that's where the innovation to me is happening. It's super exciting. I can't say I've never seen this kind of innovation on the develop. That's why I said they're rock stars again. They never really lost status of rock star status, but they are now continuing to be rock star status. Again, all enabled by the platform.
Yeah, and John, you're right. I mean, there's one thing that was prevalent throughout the entire summit and the research is, as we kind of explored day zero, day one, day two, and DevSecOps, everything that touches the CI/CD pipeline and everything that touches the SDLC, we realized that there was coding, and you touched on vibe coding, which I honed in on. But one of the things that was interesting about that comment was, we see in our research, we see that because AI is now enabling development to occur at various levels of the organization, it's no longer just a professional developer. So that rock star status that you were talking about is now going out to the lines of business, and we're seeing citizen developers doing the low code, no code touches to get things out the door. But what that's really doing is it's enabling the development, the professional developers to focus on innovation, and that's a really key for job satisfaction, but also addresses, as I mentioned earlier when we first started the whole series, I said that the two things that organizations run into when they're looking at application modernization is complexity and skill gap issue. Well, AI is helping with this, right? You were talking about platform strategy, right? And I was looking at how the key factors that organizations are considering when they're looking at a building or evolving their platform strategy. We see that 74% of enterprises, they're investing in platform engineering and streamlined developer experience, and they're looking at standardizing on environments. Now, what I would say is most developers do like their bespoke solutions, right? But a lot of organizations are harmonizing those bespoke solutions to really work with a unified view. The internal development platforms or developer platforms, the IDPs, they're really meant to reduce that time spent on infrastructure. And this is up from 50% to enable developers to focus on that value creation. And you were talking about that, but that value creation is not just a professional developer. It goes and it spans into that citizen developer as well. And then final stat I want to throw out here, John, and kind of before we kind of give it back to you is when we look at organizations, they're looking at maturing platform strategies. The ones that have a mature platform strategy, we found that in our TheCUBE research, we found that 20 to 30% faster software delivery cycles and improved cross-team collaboration. That is incredibly important because there's no longer an environment where silos and bespoke solutions, and we'll call it you were talking to the rock star, also like the hero of the day that's coming in to save the day. It's really about that team collaboration to make it work. So, John, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, and what's great about your data is that it also points to the fact that the speed gain that is really key because what's happening is that they're saying, look at how fast can we get these solutions out? So that puts a lot of pressure on the old arguments around what should I do here or there. There's real inspection around, does this scale? Are we agile? Can we meet the new emerging needs? Because the vibe coding was a great, trend and it continues to go on the front end, but the engineering and the data side is engineering. So platform engineering and data engineering are kind of coming together as we predicted on the Cube and Cube research. But with the vibe coding shifting to is the fact that it's easy to program a front end in the app layer and the bit where the business logic is. What that means is that means the citizen developer is now going to be enabled fully
Yeah.
to innovate. So that shifts. But what's going down at the platform engineering side is key. That's why I think some of the strategies and pressure points, as you pointed out, 74% are investing in engineering to streamline developer experience. Why? Because they got to go faster, right? So again, it used to be called developer productivity, but now it's like all development life cycle is at such a pace that there's no time for games and no time for like fashion wars. Should I use this or should I? There's tons of pressure. So I have to ask you, what are you seeing on the pressure points and the DevSecOps teams? Because this crosses over security, AI strategies for the app building side. Everything's under full pressure points to move faster.
Of course, of course. But I did learn as an analyst, one of the things that somebody mentioned to me early on is in order to go faster with releasing code, you actually have to slow down to go faster, right? And DevSecOps applied across the SDLC really does matter, right? If you don't slow down and ensure that you're looking at SBOMs and compliance and regulations and governance and all the pieces, that's just going to slow you down if you push code out the door. Conversely, what we see in our research is we see that out of our study, we see that 24% of respondents are looking at releasing code on an hourly basis, yet only 8% are able to do so because they don't have those unified views, those platforms in place. So I think that there's a lot here to kind of double click on. The shift left, there's only so much you can kind of keep moving left before, the developer just says, okay, I give, there's only so much I can do. But I will tell you that like one of the big areas that the third pillar that I think that came out of the summit, at least from from my perspective, is I'll call it even a few years ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, the big focus was on sustainability. We have to look at sustainability, and we have to do cost savings, and we have to do FinOps practices, and we have to understand what this means. And then what really happened was, and of course, it is, as you know, John, my practice is focused on past, present, and future of the application lifecycle. So application development and monetization. Past applications are increasingly under pressure to modernize to present state. But when the introduction of this little thing called AI, said, okay, well, we're gonna have to throw as much as we can at it. So, but like what I'm finding is that pivot point of looking at sustainable software delivery is pivoting a little bit away from, okay, well, we do have to be cost conscious. We do have to understand that the delivery of these applications and these AI intense applications, which means you use CPUs, GPUs, TPUs, whatever it may be, and connecting to LLMs and different data sources, as you were talking about, all these things that you're looking at, that requires a lot of compute, a lot of power. So sustainable software delivery is something that also came out. So we found that energy efficient code practices and optimized workloads can reduce application energy consumption by up to 60%. We found that 81% of CIOs that responded to our research indicated that sustainability is now a critical factor in software and cloud infrastructure decisions. And this has a lot to do with, the CIOs are saying, look, our number one concern, as I said early on in the sessions, our number one concern is to modernize. The two barriers are skill gap and complexity. So they basically throw a bunch of resources at it, and then they go, okay, now we have to right size this to make sure we have the right cost in place. And when we talk about things like monetization of today, containerization and right size infrastructure, it really can reduce the carbon footprint of over 30% in a cloud native environment. So there's a lot here to think about when it comes to sustainable environment. I don't think we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we need to understand what is it that AI can do and still be responsible with regards to our carbon footprint.
So I want to ask you on the sustainability piece because it's a kind of a double-edged sword in the sense there's two things going on here. Is one, productivity. Talk about the carbon footprint and that sustainability piece because that's not obvious to me because you don't think of developers sucking in resource on as a coder and you're engineering writing software, whether it's AI or whatever. How is that crossing over? Why is that such an important piece? Is it because the cloud native environments are using GPU and compute? What's the issue there?
Yeah, absolutely, John. And then what we're finding is in modernization efforts, and we found throughout the summit here, in our research, what we find is in modernization efforts, there's a separate AI budget for AI initiatives, right? So organizations will have a CIO that has an AI budget, and that budget is applied towards these AI initiatives. So what ends up happening is organizations are said, okay, you need to create a modernized approach that uses AI architectures, right? But the reality of it is not all AI workloads really need to use GPUs. They don't even need to use a fraction of the GPU. They can use CPUs. But what ends up happening is DevOps teams typically are not responsible for the budget. They will over provision, right? And they'll over provision to get their job done. So there's sometimes 2, 3, 400% over provision, and that increases that carbon footprint, right? So if you can use a CPU to start your AI initiative, you can reduce your carbon footprint and then migrate to that fractional hybrid approach of a fractional GPU and then a full-on GPU if you need to. But that really kind of evolves over your maturity of your AI projects.
What was the stat you quoted about the CIOs talk about the sustainability piece? What was the number? I can't, was it like, what's 80%? Was it 70%?
81%, indicating that the CIOs say now they have to look at sustainability is a critical factor in software and cloud infrastructure decisions. So they're looking at it in the context of the first thing that comes in mind is we need to modernize. And ideally, in a perfect world, you would have some type of FinOps practice in front of that modernization project before it starts, not after it starts. However, the reality of it is CIOs have 12 to 18 months to modernize a project. They need to get the thing done. So they move forward. And then they come back and they go, we need to rationalize and harmonize our spend.
Yeah, I love that point because you think about all the success in the developer community of the past, say, decade or so. A lot of freemium organic growth tools come out, people adopt them. Like you said, coders will over provision. Hey, it's not my budget. They just want to get the job done. So talk about how companies are looking at the FinOps piece because that's also coming into um, around the optimization of the cost structures around squeezing more efficiency out and productivity across all organizations, not just developers. So talk about the FinOps piece, because I think this is not just a how do I save money? I think this is also factoring from our data. I met with Amazon last week. That's a big part of infrastructure management. So it's kind of like crossing over. It's not just, hey, here's a tool to save money. It seems to be much more of an organizational, holistic system piece. Are developers thinking about that? Is that more of a CIO thing? How would you frame that? Because I think this is coming up more and more. The FinOps vertical sector is emerging into almost a CFO thing and CIO
Yeah,
thing.
John, I've been following FinOps. I think I went to FinOps X this year, and this is the fourth year they've held the conference, and I've been to it since inception. And I'll tell you that the evolution of FinOps is it used to be viewed as like back in the sustainability approach and the focus around ESG and governance and such. That used to be like the primary focus, and like I said, as I already mentioned, we introduced this little thing called AI, and that kind of blew everything up, right? And then so that kind of said, okay, well, we're no longer going to be like worried about sustainability because we need to figure out how to get AI projects working. So, but now organizations it's not so much I would view it based on the data that we have. I would view it as an adjacent part of an initiative than the primary concern.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on a trend that we're seeing. I know you're covering it, but I want to kind of zoom out a little bit. With coding assistance, a lot more AI is being used. Yes, I checked the sustainable box, but the shift to the hybrid operating model is a big one. You've reported on this earlier in the year. I think you wrote a story on SiliconANGLE about this. We're seeing more and more less operations, but more operations, if I could say that. In other words, a lot of the AI is coming in helping on operations, but at the same time, the developers are spending still time on this. This seems to be an efficiency area. What's your take on some of the operating models? How much time is coding? How much time is managing the environment and dealing with costs on-prem, cloud, and edge, obviously becoming more and more distributed? What are the priorities? What are the areas people are working on? Can you share your thoughts on the shift on the operating model? Because clearly distributed computing has established itself in full hybrid.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure, John. And I won't just share my thoughts, I'll share our data with it because our data that really is like my thoughts are my thoughts, and I can give you my opinions, but I can tell you what the
Share
data
the data.
stands,
Share
that's what
both.
that we know.
Yeah.
So what I know is we asked our survey of 10 respondents to at the same question. We said, like, what's the challenges that you run into? And what we saw, and I've seen this over my trending research over the years, I've been doing research here and doing data around this, is the fact that hybrid models are growing. We see that movement of application development to and from the cloud resources is impairing. We see that, for example, 20% of respondents indicate that application portability is critical. 67% say it's very important. So 87% of respondents indicate that it's either critical or very important to have that application portable. Why is that important? Well, what we found was a lot of the burst capacity of moving from locale. So whether you're moving from on-prem to the edge to the cloud or whatever that cloud may be, you need to move the application, do your development, do the burst capacity of resource allocation, build your application, and then repatriate that application back. And before anybody jumps on me about repatriation, because I mean that's something that it kind of seems to be sensitive to some people, we have research that shows that only 11% of respondents in our survey indicated that they're doing cloud native application development on-prem. But we asked them and extrapolated out over 2 years, and we said, in the next 2 years, what are your thoughts? And 33% indicated that they're going to do cloud native development on-prem. So there's a repatriation effort of moving that data back. So that's a kind of an operational model when it comes to resources. But when it comes to culture, I would say. You asked a question earlier about FinOps practices and do developers and DevOps teams really care? Well, here's the thing. I would say since I've been doing these studies, these trending studies, I've found that over the last 4 years, what we found is, pushing the big green button of getting the code out the door was the DevOps teams like their goal, right? But they would push code out the door that wasn't really the most effective code. And because their KPI was to push it out the door. What we're finding now is more organizations are focused around SLOs. We find this in our research. We find that as service level objectives, where everyone's rolling towards that North Star directly with the company. The company KPIs are driving towards that same approach. And that also includes that the spending is appropriate as well. So the checks and balances are in place. The research is showing that we're trending towards more of a holistic view across the organizational KPIs, marching to those hybrid models.
Clearly, the convergence of cloud AI and application development is driving the shift. We're seeing that in how software is built and maintained. Love the research, love the summit. I guess my final question to you is, as the AI North Star emerges, which is essentially how do I build an intelligent organization, the business logic at the top of the stack at the application layer will be the main game. Domain expertise, mixture of experts, all these things are happening. You're going to see the no code, low code certainly fuel that. How are organizations embracing some of the modernization techniques? How would you describe that? And what will be the competitive edge from your data?
Yeah, I mean, I think that AI is an enabler, right? It's the drill and not the hand screwdriver, right? And AI allows you to get things done faster. It allows you to do what you need to get done. But I will caution people in the research. What I've been finding is we asked about accountability in the research, and one of the things that we all know of a scenario where an organization gave out free airline tickets, right? Because their chatbot put it out the door, right? And the organization is saying, look, that wasn't our fault. The AI did it. And it's like, no, but the AI is a tool. It's not an excuse to do something wrong. So there's two things that I would say, John, is that North Star that organizations are running towards. It's about productivity, enablement, and acceleration of your development efforts. What I would caution the viewers of this to do, and organizations watching, is to be careful when it comes to that rite of passage for your junior level employees. A lot of organizations we find are using AI to replace almost those entry level positions. And my caution here is we all had a rite of passage to come up to this. And in 5 years or so, when you're looking for an experienced engineer, experienced developer, or experienced person to do the job, they have to have that rite of passage, and somebody have had to teach them that rite of passage to get there. And that's what I would say is be careful of balancing between the tools in your toolbox versus your equally important resource as a human capital.
That's awesome. Well, let's wrap up the summit, AppDev Done Right Summit. Congratulations on the great program.
Thank
What's the big takeaway? What is the summary? What was the highlights? Were there moments? Give us the bottom line.
Yeah, the bottom line, John, is there's a tremendous amount of data to kind of go through. I'm more than happy to continue the dialogue. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of sharing this information. We have all this information in survey data. We have comprehensive ebooks and infographics and research briefs, and I have my research notes that we're publishing on theCUBE and in the videos like this to share the data. So it's a lot of data to talk about. I think the key takeaway is, looking at the impacts across day zero, which, the build, the release of day one, and the operations of day two, and the DevSecOps part and the security that overlays all of this and the SDLC across the CI/CD pipeline. That is the key. That is, that's the focus for this session. That's the focus for this last couple of days of preparing for these videos and such and the research. But this is, again, just the beginning of sharing this information. Wherever you are in your journey, take a look at the information and then make an educated decision. Be educated about what you're doing next, because you can spend an awful lot of money on something that you really is not going to achieve the goal that you want to get to.
Yeah, great stuff. Again, very cool event, very relevant. I would say that every enterprise I talk to, whether they're a vendor or looking to, sell something or build a platform or an end user, there's two areas: clients, their customers, and the developers. Those are the hottest areas right now from a capital and human standpoint. Human labor, agents are starting to fit right in. App dev will open up and down the stack. So great event. Paul, thank you so much for
Thank
putting
you.
it on, and great lineup. And again, looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.
All right, I'm John Furrier here in theCUBE with Paul Nashawaty, breaking down all the action. App development, that's the developers. These are the folks driving the innovation, building the platforms, making it sustainable. Stay tuned for next time.